Tonight, a special 40-minute commercial-free debate.
I must now move on.
As Premier Andrew Furey prepares to step down, two of his former cabinet ministers, John Abbott and John Hogan, are vying to replace him as Liberal leader and 15th Premier of the province. The winner will navigate a changing political landscape, one that will include a new prime minister, the highest debt in our history, the ongoing threats from the U.S., and the responsibility of turning the promise of a game-changing Churchill Falls deal into a multi-billion-dollar reality. This is John Abbott's second run at the province's top job. He has decades of experience as a senior bureaucrat. John Hogan is a longtime Liberal and lawyer who launched his own firm prior to entering politics. Welcome to this special CBC presentation, Picking a Premier. And both contenders are here with me in the Here and Now studio, John Hogan and John Abbott. Thank you so much for being here and taking part in this debate.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
Well, the stakes are pretty high in this race. Starting tomorrow, registered Liberals in this province will begin voting for one of these two candidates. The results will be announced in just over a week on Saturday, May 3rd at the Liberal Leadership Convention in St. John. So let's start with the structure of this debate. We'd like this to be a discussion, so your answers will not be timed. My goal here is to give you equal opportunity to answer the questions and to respond to each other. So let's jump in now with the very first question. And we did do a draw earlier to decide who goes first. And Mr. Hogan, this first question is for you. You and Mr. Abbott were both elected 4 years ago. You have both held multiple cabinet positions in Andrew Furey's government. Why are you the best person to lead the province and also to lead the Liberals into the next election?
Thanks very much, Carolyn, and thanks for having us here today, and thanks to John as well for being here for this discussion. I've been involved with the Liberal Party for a long time. This is maybe my fourth leadership convention, and obviously my first one as a candidate. And I've contributed a lot to the Liberal Party over the last number of years. I've also, as you said, been involved as a politician who was elected 4 years ago at the same time my friend John got elected. And I've contributed a lot to the Furey government over the past 4 years and held some important portfolios. Minister of Justice and Public Safety, Attorney General, Minister of Health and Community Services, and Government House Leader. And I think my combination of my political experience in those portfolios, which are, I would suggest, portfolios that have a lot of importance and what's important to the people of Newfoundland and Labrador, and my background experience with the Liberal Party and all the Liberals I've met over the past 10 or 15 years is a combination that allows me to have those ability to lead the party and the province in the next coming years.
Okay, Mr. Hogan, thank you so much for that. And now the same question to you, Mr. Abbott. What makes you the best person to lead the province?
Well, thank you, Carolyn, for the question. And I'm drawing on my experience really over 40 years in government, senior deputy minister over the past 4 years, working as a minister with Premier Furey and Minister Hogan and others. Has, again, some very tough portfolios: housing, transportation, health, mental health, and dealing with the homelessness issues here. And as a deputy minister, I had obviously a lot of contributions to make. What I am drawing on is that experience and to bring that to the Premier's office and the Premier's chair. I'm passionate about this province. I know we have so many opportunities before us. And I think it's incumbent on the next leader of the Liberal Party and certainly the next Premier to take advantage and leverage those opportunities. And that's what I want to do, bring the experience, and I can get things done starting day one. I have an agenda that I want to bring forward, and I'm looking forward to the challenge. It's going to be an honor to be Premier of this province and something I'm looking forward to.
Thank you so much, Mr. Abbott, for that. And we're going to stay with you now for this next question. The Liberals just released its budget, and it's filled, of course, with promises, plans, and policies. But can you tell us two of your own policies that you would introduce as Premier?
Well, Carolyn, I've put out my platform, starting with, and really a focus on seniors. They are really struggling with the cost of living and affordability, particularly the seniors on very low incomes. We have seniors who are in poverty. So I am committed to putting a plan in place to have a targeted basic income for seniors to help them with the issues around the cost of living. And related to that is the need for affordable housing for seniors and for other low-income families. Again, we need 10,000 units in this province by 2030. I'm committed to making sure we have those units in place, again, focusing on seniors, low-income families, supportive housing, so that all communities and all people in the province have a place to call home.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Abbott. Mr. Hogan, now the same question to you. Can you tell us 2 policies that you would bring forward if you win?
Yeah, absolutely. So one policy, which I've already mentioned over the course of this campaign, is providing free shingles vaccines to everyone in this province who's over the age of 50. Now, of course, the Liberal government had already announced the shingles vaccine program for people who are between 65 and 70 and those who are immunocompromised. But having been around the province and talked to seniors and talked to families, it is very important that everybody who's over the age of 50 has that shingles vaccine. And that's a great policy perspective for a number of reasons. One, it goes to the importance of looking after our seniors in this province. 2, it goes to healthcare, which is very, very important as well. And 3rd, it goes to affordability. Shingles vaccines are not cheap, and we need to provide that lower cost, that free cost, to people who are over the age of 50 to make sure that they can avail of that shingles vaccine. Keep people healthy, keep people out of the emergency rooms, and that shingles vaccine will do that. And providing it to everybody over the age of 50 will benefit not only them, but really benefit everybody in the province and our healthcare system as a whole. No. The second thing I'd like to mention is not necessarily a policy per se, but as I've gone around the province and talked to people, it's very clear that there's 2 things that stand out as terms of groups who are important. One, as Mr. Abbott mentioned, is our seniors. I've said in the House of Assembly on a number of occasions, our seniors built this province. They lived in their communities with their families, they made friends, they worked there, they built the communities from the ground up. And now we owe it to them, and I owe it to them as Premier of this province, to help make sure that they are able to stay in their communities.
Okay, I'm just going to interrupt you there,
Sure.
Mr. Hogan. I just want to start a little discussion here before we move on. I'd like to give you both an opportunity to respond to each other. I'd ask you both to offer up 2 unique policies. Mr. Abbott, Mr. Hogan, do you have anything to say about the ideas that were just presented here?
Well, if I can start, Carolyn, I think it's important, and as John said, about seniors, but through my travels around the province and the conversations I've had as late as this week out in central Newfoundland, it was quite comforting to me in the sense of validating the things I was hearing from this end of the province to find out in central and when I was in Labrador that the issues around seniors and affordability is core issue for all families, all communities, but we need specifics to help them on that very particular issue, and that's why I think having a targeted basic income will definitely help keep taking seniors out of poverty. That should not be in this province. We're rich enough to make sure we don't have that, and then make sure they have the homes and housing that they need. So that's why I've focused on those 2 in particular, and that's what people have asked of me.
Yeah, so I'll just finish the point I was making about not necessarily a policy, but really restructuring government to focus on what's very, and what's the most important to Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. And that, as I was saying, with seniors, we have a very big department with children, seniors, and social development, which I think needs to be broken down and have a minister who focuses purely on seniors and long-term care living in this province. The other thing I've heard about, and it does go to affordability, is families. I have 2 young children. I have an 8-year-old and a 3-year-old. I know that the cost has gone up for many things over the past few years. Affordability has been and is still an issue. I know the cost of groceries. I know the cost of gas. I know the cost of having children. And part of that restructuring of that department will be having a minister who focuses on families and their needs and what's important to them.
Okay, and on that note, let's go to our next topic, which is something that affects all of us.
The rents are so high, the taxes are so high, and it's just, it's depressing sometimes that, you are not even sleeping well, you have to do so much work.
It's not sustainable, and if something's not done soon, I think things will get a lot worse.
I'm actually moving out of my apartment right now just because of rental increases, right?
Really?
So yeah, just going back to actually help my parents sell their house and try and, get something on the go with them where we can kind of share a 2-apartment house just because we're both, kind of tight for money, and I feel like everyone around is, right?
Those of us who have better incomes can manage, but we're finding the scrape of it all as well. You hate paying more than you think it's worth.
Yes, so some real concerns there from people in the province. The cost of food, rent, pretty much everything is getting more expensive. So this next question is for you, Mr. Hogan. There are measures already in the budget to help people with affordability, such as the gas tax reduction. But what else can you offer people who are struggling to keep up?
Yeah, so the people that spoke there, or the people I was referring to that I've met with across Newfoundland and Labrador over the past couple of months during this leadership campaign, and I understand the struggles that people have. I understand affordability issues, and I know that we've done things, as you said, the gas tax. We've also cut the registration for car vehicles. That's little bits here and there, but it does all add up towards decreasing costs for families and for individuals in this province. I know one of the individuals talked about living in a home with his parents. Part of what the Health Accord looks at is making sure that seniors can stay in their communities, but they might not necessarily want to stay in the houses where they live. Their children have moved out. We can get those seniors out into smaller houses, but they can stay in their communities, and that will free up affordable housing for other people in this province. And that's something that I'll certainly look at and make sure is done if I'm Premier of this province.
Okay, so Mr. Abbott, same question to you. What would you do to help make life more affordable for people?
Thank you, Carol. Again, I think the stories we've heard are real, and I'm hearing them as well. And it is incumbent upon government, and that's why we're here, is to govern and to help people who really need the supports. So we need to look at our tax system, and are there any opportunities to reduce taxes? And we have done that in recent budgets, and I think we need to continue on that road. We also need to look at around the affordability of housing, so that's why I want to make sure when we put forward our 10,000 unit plan that it focuses on affordability. And one of the programs that is quite successful right now in the provincial government is the rent assistance program for families who are low incomes, who are struggling with their rent. We need to expand that program. We need to expand what we're doing in terms of home repairs for seniors. So again, to keep people in their own homes, in their own communities, but they need financial support. So the government, with its $10 billion plus budget, needs to reorganize some of its finances to make sure we can focus on their needs. Because without doing that, these issues are only going to get worse for the individuals we heard from.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Abbott. Want to stay